The Way of Kings. Is it overrated? Is it overhyped? Is it mainstream diarrhea? Absolutely no. You heard me right. Absolutely no. In no way is The Way of Kings overrated, overhyped, or like some mainstream obsession that is going to fade away. This book has staying power. Not only this book, but the Stormlight Archive and the second book, the third book, and the fourth book that is out. And I suspect the 10th book, which is the projected length of this particular epic fantasy story. And let me tell you why. Brandon Sanderson, the author of this story, one of the things I appreciate about him in this world with Rosha, the Stormlight Archive, with his characters, is how he actually does not steal from J.R. Tolkien. Of course, there is nothing wrong with taking inspiration from J.R. Tolkien. I don't mind that. But I hate it when so many I hate it when so many epic fantasy books, all they have going for them is I have dwarves and I have elves and I have some magical world. And that is what a lot of epic fantasy boils down to. We have this magical world, and there is really not much depth to it other than they would even have, you know, complete things that are just ripped off from Tolkien word to word. And this can be found in a lot of epic fantasy books like Wizard's First Rule. I love that Brandon Sanderson, of course, he has some influences from Tolkien, but other than minimal, tiny, minuscule influences that are just there because a world has to have these things. Technically speaking, Brandon Sanderson does not shy away from experimenting with the genre. With Brandon in The Way of Kings, what we get is a completely new world, and all of it is because of these high storms that are happening. And heck, let's even talk about the magic system. I'm not playing around. The magic systems in this story are beautifully constructed because a lot of the time, you know, there are two issues here. There are two problems with magic in the epic fantasy subcategory. If the magic is a hard magic, the authors, what they do is they fail to have any continuity. They fail to have any continuity, and quickly the laws that they have established are disregarded to solve a problem conveniently, or new magic comes along that overthrows the old magic. And now the old magic is like, you know, this adds or it bypasses a rule that was in the magic, right? Brandon doesn't do that. I have not seen him do that in anywhere whatsoever. And I love this. But also another problem is that with magic systems in general, right? Soft and hard magic systems, there is this thing where magic is used a lot of the times to solve a problem in a cheap way. But with Brandon, this doesn't happen a lot. This is a very important note because it has to be appreciated. I just want you to really appreciate this. When, Brandon Sanderson is using magic in this story, first of all, it always adds, there are birds fighting outside. It always adds tension. It always adds conflict. Yes. But on top of that, it never really feels too cheap. Either if the magic is used, it is used very cleverly to solve a problem, and it is very difficult and therefore it feels earned. But on top of that, when it is used, it feels cohesive. Like the whole thing from book 1, book 2, it just all feels cohesive. And this is rare to find. This is difficult to find in epic fantasy, especially when the scale gets out of control, as is the case with epic fantasy. But another thing that you have to understand is how we have to appreciate how this book has technically saved the epic fantasy genre, because a lot of epic fantasy is very slow to move. I'm not talking about the story, I'm talking about the genre. The genre itself does not move, and the genre doesn't go anywhere. It is one of the slowest ones to catch up, specifically one of the slowest subcategories in the fantasy genre to catch up. And when The Way of Kings came out, it was that thirst, it was that push to modernize the epic fantasy genre. And I do not think there is any other epic fantasy book out there that has come out in the last decade and a half that has pushed the epic fantasy genre more than The Way of Kings. So I hope that you can understand that this book is not overrated. This book is not just another fantasy book. This is the fantasy book, and it is not to be put at the bottom of a to be read list. Of course, that is all my opinion. I think people who read fantasy, who have any interest in the genre, they should pick up this book and they should read it. And of course, you can hate it, I have not liked it the first time I read it. In fact, I DNF'd it. Eventually, when I read it again, I loved it that much. So yes, it's not just another book in my opinion. It is a very, very important book, and it is a very, very good book, and it is a cornerstone to modern fantasy, specifically cornerstone for modern epic fantasy. In 40, 50 years, too far, people already forget about it. Future is future. We're talking about now. The Way of Kings is a classic today. It was a classic half a decade ago, and it was a classic immediately after it was published. It's that good. I'm not playing around. This book has to be picked up. Please pick it up. It's beautiful. I hope that you took something from this. And remember, The Way of Kings is not overrated. Have a nice day. Bye.